Alright, look, I know we say this every single offseason, but this offseason is going to be crazy for a couple reasons. First of all, for the first time in NBA history, we have a real level of parity. And I think the easiest way we could display that is there's only been one time in NBA history where we had 5 different champions in 5 straight years. And that was the late 70s into the early 80s, where we had the Blazers, the Bullets, the Sonics, the Lakers, and then the Celtics. And as we all know, the rest of the 80s were dominated by the Lakers and the Celtics. And unless the Lakers make a miraculous comeback, we're gonna have the 5th different team to win a championship in the 5th year in a row. Starting with the Raptors, Lakers, Bucks, Warriors, and potentially the Nuggets or the Miami Heat. I think that is the best way I could possibly outline the parity in the NBA right now. And I think for that reason, whether it's good or bad, it's going to force teams to make some moves this summer. And what makes it even crazier is when you look at this year's draft, look at how many teams may be making moves at this year's draft. I think we all would be surprised if the Trailblazers kept the 3rd pick. They're probably going to trade that pick. Are the Mavericks really going to use the 10th pick in the draft? The Warriors have the 19th pick in the draft. Do they really need another young guy? And even some of these younger teams that may be ready to take the next step. Do the New Orleans Pelicans really need the 14th pick, or are they going to move that for a veteran to help right now? The OKC Thunder, yes, they'll probably use the 12th pick, but maybe they could package a couple picks and go out and get a star level player to plug in right now. I'm not saying that's the right or wrong move. I didn't even mention the Lakers have the 17th pick. The Lakers historically have been great at drafting, but maybe they trade that pick to go out and get more help right now. And the other interesting thing about this is there aren't a ton of stars that are free agents right now, and there's not a ton of teams with cap space. And when you look at the quote-unquote stars that are free agents, most of them are likely to go back to that same team. You have James Harden, who's probably going to stay in Philly or go to Houston. You have Chris Middleton, who's an interesting one. We don't really know. He might opt into his player option, or he might not. He probably will because he struggled this season. You have Kyrie Irving. Who knows what he's going to do? You have Kristaps Porzingis. He's probably going to stay in Washington. And you have some more interesting ones further down the line, right? You have Vucevic. You have Jeremy Grant. You have Gary Trent Jr. You have Fred VanVleet. All pretty interesting names. And those are the type of players and veterans that you want to add to a young team to take the next step. When you look at the teams that have cap space, it's the Rockets, the Pacers, the Pistons, the Spurs, the Magic, the Thunder, and the Utah Jazz. Other than maybe the Thunder would overpay for someone like Jeremy Grant, but the rest of those teams aren't going to be spending a bunch of money on one player. The teams that would be likely to go after some of these guys don't have cap space, which means the only way they could really improve would be through trades. And I think that's where this NBA offseason will get crazy. And I'm looking at 3 guys in particular. I'm looking at Jaylen Brown, how this season just ended for them. I'm looking at Pascal Siakam, and I'm looking at Karl Anthony Towns. And the 2 teams that come to mind immediately are the Portland Trailblazers and the Golden State Warriors. For the Warriors, I understand the conversation around Jordan Poole right now, but I promise you Jordan Poole actually has value in this league. Jonathan Kuminga is a really valuable prospect. They have the 19th pick in this year's draft, and they could add more picks. So does a package of Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, and 3 first-round picks, does that move the needle for someone like Toronto? For Pascal Siakam, or even a lesser deal for someone like OG Anunoby, obviously the Warriors would not and should not give up all of that for OG Anunoby, in my opinion. But Jordan Poole, Kuminga, the 19th pick in this year's draft, 2 more first in the future, I would seriously think about that if I was the Raptors. And I would definitely think about it if I was the Raptors and the Blazers came to me with an offer of Anthony Simons, the 3rd pick in this year's draft, and maybe a couple more first in the future for Pascal Siakam. I would do that. If I'm the Raptors, I love the idea of pairing Anthony Simons and potentially someone like Brandon Miller with Scotty Barnes and building for the future. If you're the Boston Celtics and you just potentially got swept by the Miami Heat, does that maybe not sound a little bit more appealing to you? I don't know. You could easily make the argument that these teams should just stand pat and come back next year because these are all pretty good teams besides Portland. I know it sounds crazy to say, but the Boston Celtics are going to be one of, if not the favorite to win the East next year. I know the Warriors situation seems dire, but would it be that surprising if they got just a better year from Jordan Poole next year? And maybe just relying on development from Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, and Jordan Poole is the way to go instead of trading that for someone like Pascal Siakam. I don't know the answers, but it seems like the NBA is wide open right now, and maybe that's a bit disrespectful to the Nuggets, and maybe they're about to go on some dynastic run. But when the NBA seems like it's wide open, it causes teams to do a little bit desperate things. Just when you look at the NBA this season, it feels like every team that's not the Nuggets or the Miami Heat feel like their season was a huge disappointment. And I know that's kind of normally the case, But look at the Milwaukee Bucks and how their season ended. They fired their coach. Chris Middleton's a free agent this summer. I believe Brook Lopez is a free agent this summer. A lot of things going on there. Look at the Phoenix Suns. They went to the finals 2 years ago, won 64 games last year, and now they're firing their coach, potentially trading Chris Paul and or DeAndre Ayton. The Golden State Warriors won the championship last year, and now they're looking to trade Jordan Poole. Things are moving so fast and teams are getting so desperate because it doesn't feel like there's that juggernaut in the NBA. Like I said, 5 different champions in 5 straight years. This is not a normal place for the NBA to be, which is going to cause some abnormal behavior. I mentioned the Pelicans earlier, and they might be one of those teams that makes the big move. To be honest, if Zion Williamson wasn't hurt last season, they might have made the big move last year. They might have pursued someone like OG Anunoby. I'm looking at the Memphis Grizzlies now. It's complicated by the John Morant situation, but that could very easily be a team that makes a splash move. And then you got the teams that are selling, and immediately Washington and Chicago come to mind. Could DeMar DeRozan be the third option on a team for the first time in his career in his rightful role? Does anybody want to take on Bradley Beal's contract? Does anybody want Julius Randle? And the name I mentioned earlier, Karl Anthony Towns, the Warriors definitely aren't getting cat. The Wolves would not do a trade with them again. But again, similar package. Anthony Simons, the 3rd pick in the draft for a cat. I think the Timberwolves would have to be intrigued by that. And one more name to throw into the mix here is Jrue Holiday. That may seem a little bit counterintuitive to you guys, but Jrue Holiday has not performed for this team in the playoffs the last couple years. Even though they won a championship, go look at his playoff run. He has not been as good as advertised, and for a team like the Warriors or the Blazers, I don't think he's worth it. But for a different team, I can't tell you exactly what that team is. But for a team that needs another guard, I can see him being a real trade candidate because the Bucks are old and they need to get younger, and they don't really have a lot of avenues, a lot of draft picks or anything like that to do that. So trading Jrue Holiday might be the easiest way to do that. Like I said earlier, Chris Middleton is a free agent this summer if he wants to be. I believe Brook Lopez is a free agent. Bobby Portis is getting older, and we can't just take for granted that Giannis is going to age gracefully. We know he doesn't really have the jumper to help him age along. I think he needs a little bit more help as far as offensive creation, and I think Jrue Holiday is not that guy. But we're going to wrap it up on that note. I know I've been kind of rambling a bit here. I just think something huge is about to happen this offseason. I didn't even mention what's going to happen with Tyler Hero if the Miami Heat win the championship without him. Wouldn't you just trade him at that point? I don't know. It's not really that simple, but that's a possibility. Let me know what you think is going to happen this offseason. What moves would you like to see happen? Do you think these teams are overreacting and they should just run it back next year? Particularly the Warriors and Boston, should they just run it back? Would the Celtics not be a 1 or 2 favorite in the East next season? That may sound disrespectful to the Heat, but I don't even think the odds would have them as the favorite next season. We know the Nuggets are going to be the favorites in the West, but after that, would the Warriors not be right there? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think these teams should do in the comments down below. I'm out. Peace.